order at 4:28, right?
Yes, calling the meeting to order at 4:28. And actually, I think I've learned that we need to do roll call attendance.
Yep.
So Lynn Reynolds,
Here.
Jane Dutcher,
Here.
Alan Genovese,
Present?
Michelle Druso.
Here.
Okay, David Young is not here, and Greg Snedeker is not here.
Right.
Okay.
And Greg, I know is not going to join us. Greg,
Right.
he had a class. He won't be able to join us.
Right. Okay, I'm recording the meeting, and is anybody else recording the meeting? Perfectly fine if you do, but we just need to announce it.
And whose turn is it to take the minutes? Did Len do
It's
last
gonna be
one?
Michelle's turn.
Oh, it is.
Okay. They're passing it around.
That's not
Thank
quite
you for
fair.
letting me know.
It's a roaming secretary.
All
Just-
right.
Just so you know,
Oh,
Michelle,
Jane. Jane is very clever. I love it.
What did Jane say?
Oh, she just got very creative. That's Len and
Oh.
Jane share it and whoever else we have. And so now it's you two. We have a secretary.
Okay.
she was hoping you'd go for that, Michelle.
Oh, really?
She walked right in, didn't she?
Yeah, so I'd make a motion that we add Michelle as our third roaming secretary. If she's all right with that.
Yeah, I was going to say, Michelle, how do you feel about that?
That's okay. I just wasn't prepared and I have a bunch of stuff in front of me I'm trying to put away. So
Well, Michelle,
hold on.
what we do is depend on the recording and we write the minutes up from the recording.
Oh, you do?
Michael sends you the recording and then you just,
Oh, all
The minute.
right. So I don't have to do it now.
Yeah,
Okay.
If you want to take notes, it can help, but
All right.
yeah.
whatever.
So that allows you to participate. So if you're okay with that, we need a second and a vote.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 The record could
thank you,
show it
Michelle.
was unanimous.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Well, thank you very much, Michelle, and welcome to our subcommittee. This is your first
you.
meeting, so
Yep.
you don't get dragooned into doing something new every single time.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
think.
That's good to know.
Oh, don't promise her that.
I was just thinking as
No,
I
and I
said
would-
that. Watch it happen, right?
I would make a motion that we approve the minutes submitted by Lynn Reynolds of the December 9th meeting.
Okay, I'll second that. And discussion, I know that Jane had a couple of suggestions,
Yeah.
which we can't discuss over email, so we'll talk about them now.
Oh, gosh, I've forgotten what they were. They were,
Well, I know what, Jane, I know what they were. I got a copy here.
all right.
Um,
They were just minor corrections, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Right. As a matter of fact, let me see if I can share my screen.
Mike, if they're just like word replacements or language, you don't have to, have a discussion about change this word, change that word. So if the gist of is accurate, then you can just make the what do we call it? The grammatical corrections.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's good that people know what change. I mean, because one person's simple grammatical change might be someone else's. Wait a minute, that's not quite the way it should be. So it won't take long. Okay.
Okay.
On the first page, on the 6th paragraph, which is the second to last one, at the end, it reads, he said that the pandemic has showed people, and Jane suggested changing that to Alan said that the pandemic has shown people.
Oops. Shoot. Okay.
Yes, because Jane was doing some talking first, and then it referred back to what Alan was saying. So just to clarify who the he is.
Well,
Right.
I'm not a Jane. I'm not a he. I'm not a she.
Okay.
Okay, and then on the next paragraph, the first line, Alan stated that the information the committee has developed, it says with, and that should be will.
Yes, will be a resource. Yes, a
And
computer.
Michelle, if you like, I've got a document that's got this stuff marked up, so I can just send it to you after the meeting
Okay.
to make it a little easier.
What was that
Or-
on
or-
the
all right.
second page? What paragraph?
It was the
This is
very
the-
next paragraph, Ellen.
Yeah, it's still on
Oh,
the first page.
okay. Oh, I don't see
Okay.
that.
And
Still
then
on
I
the
had a
Oh, okay.
suggestion. I had a suggestion back on the first paragraph, 1, 2, 3, fourth line down. Actually, starting on the third line, Michael N. stated that there is a need to clean up the formatting on the website. And I would change on the website to of that report. Because it sounded to me as if, I was saying the website itself needs cleaning up, but actually it's that report which is on the website. That's what needs to be cleaned up.
Yes.
So, anybody have anything else? Okay, hearing nothing, I will entertain a vote to approve the minutes as with the suggested emendations.
So moved.
Second,
Okay, all in favor?
I,
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I'll send this document around to everybody. How's that sound? And then Lynn, since they're your minutes, why don't you fix up a final copy and you can send it to Greg to put on the website. Actually, you can send it to all of us.
okay.
So we took Jane, did you vote?
I did. Yes.
I abstained.
So all right, so the record shows that it was unanimous and except for Michelle abstained. Now,
Michelle
Michelle, you can vote even though you weren't there. You know
I
that,
know.
right?
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Well, one quick question, Alan. Any progress on getting a better copy of that consultant's report?
Yeah, so an update on that is Greg had sent a message to Mark. Mark didn't respond. Greg sent a second message to him and Mark wrote back, he would like to talk. So he asked
That's what
if we
Mark
could.
does.
Yeah, so he asked if Greg and I and him could get a date together so that we could talk. It sounded like he's a little nervous about, because we talked about, can you send a Word document? It sounded like he was a little concerned about sending a document that could be changed. And so Greg was trying to make it clear, no, we're just looking for formatting. So he's trying, we thought we could do it next Tuesday, but someone wrote back and said he's not, they're not available. So we'll press on and try to get a date.
Okay.
But
Well,
they're working on it. The minutes can reflect that they're working with the consultant to see if we can get a better version to put on the website.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Any other comments on that?
No,
Um,
we're never
I-
gonna
I
get
just-
hard copies of that unless we print them ourselves, right?
Yeah.
It just sounds like fixing that formatting is more of an issue than it first appears.
I would say that's an accurate statement because it wasn't like, oh, okay, I'll send you one. So I don't know what that means. And to Jane's point, I really thought that part of this process was they were going to send us a hard copy. So when I do have that conversation, I'm going to follow up with, we need a couple hard copies of this. So,
That would be really wonderful.
Okay, and then that would, yeah, I mean, it seems a little odd to me because the first version, the formatting was fine, and from what we understand, they didn't actually change very much. So why the
But you know,
process?
since it's a PDF, I'm going to guess that it happened when they exported it from Word
Yeah.
into PDF, and that the software is the one that messed up the formatting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the last one was a PDF too, so.
I know,
And
but
you would, yeah, well, hopefully we can get a better copy, but that's what slowed us down at our last meeting was.
right.
We hadn't
And,
seen the actual final.
I
Wouldn't
report.
one of the deliverables for the grant be that they give you a readable document? I mean, that's what we did in the Heart Committee.
Well, you can read it, but when you try to print off any section of it, the formatting is so bad you can't get a decent
Yeah,
copy.
the paragraphing and the titles no longer go with the charts in a lot of cases.
It's just not worth printing it.
It's a lot
Right,
harder
and-
to understand.
so
But-
what
but that-
happened last time, Michelle, is we didn't have in there that they had to send us, a hard copy of things. What happened last time on the first grant is that the report was sent to Michael Sullivan, and then his office made copies. So so they're doing, what they did last time is they sent it to the district. So I'll have to ask Brian, and we have a meeting that we're trying to set up with Brian and John. And what's interesting is John replied right away and said he's available, next week at 2:00 or whatever it was. But then Brian responded, we said Monday or Tuesday, but Brian's response was interesting. He just responded and said, I'm not available Monday or Tuesday at 4:00. And that was it. He didn't say, however, here are some other times. So I wrote back and say, well, when else could you? So it might be interesting. We might have a flip now where one superintendent is kind of coming on board, because I think John is. And to that end, I want to say that John reached out to Brian a week or two ago because Pioneer, I don't know if she's already resigned, but it looked like there's going to be an opening or is an opening in the food service and director. And so John reached out to Brian to say, hey, is this something? And I talked to John about it. He said, is this something that we could, put our toe in the water and see how it would work out to have a shared food service director, which I thought, was really nice of him to reach out. And because, the distance that we have, between them would, we'd get a chance to see how that would work, to have a director handling food service, a lot of ordering and talking to people. But then Brian didn't get back. So I called Greg today and I said, you really got to push for a need to, let's have the four of us, two superintendents, Greg and I, let's have a meeting and see if we can get one of them to, do the grant. And then the second part is let's kind of explore whether we will be able to do this. So I'm just hoping that there's not now hesitation on Brian's part that, well, gee, why would I want to do this? I just became superintendent of Gil Montague. It seems like the natural course. You finally get a superintendent. Why would you want to now to explore, merging and maybe not having one? So I think you know, that may be a new challenge that we'll have to work through. The other thing I want to say is part of the meeting is going to be asking them, the two superintendents, about, we have an opportunity to apply for a grant, you know, it'd be nice if one of the districts did, and then ask them as they look at the report, what do you think we need to explore further as we, you know, peel the onion back and we get down to the next layer? And I also want to put that out to I don't know if I did this at the last meeting, but it's something that I wanted the education and the finance subcommittees to be talking and asking the question, if we go after a grant, what do we want to have the consultants look at next? So Mike, I'm sure you have some ideas. I'm sure the finance committee, you know, can look, you know, say, okay, if we can get money, here's what we didn't get that we think is important. And like I said, I'm going to do the same thing with the education committee and ask them the same question. So
Okay, well, that's
if
a
I didn't do
nice-
that last time and it's not on this agenda, then, you know, something I'd like you guys to talk about.
Well, we
Okay.
mentioned it in our last meeting, that one possibility was delving into the condition of the facilities that we might become property of this district or responsibility of this district. And we talked about the two high schools, middle school, high school buildings. And we sort of said that maybe we didn't care about the elementary buildings, but I've been thinking about that since, and I think we care about them too, because even though the physical plant and the capital expenditures are the responsibility of the individual towns, there are other expenses that fall to the district. So condition of the building matters how much those things cost, if you followed my.
Well, I think one of the things we talked about at our last meeting was, you know, whether it makes sense for the towns to continue owning the buildings. And we didn't come to an answer, but the issue of, well, when the towns own the buildings, but the districts are responsible for maintaining them, there's kind of an incentive, if you want to think about it that way, for the districts to not do the maintenance and then come to the towns periodically
Okay.
and say, you know, we've got a capital need that needs to be addressed, which might not have been necessary had regular maintenance been being done.
We did discuss that, and I think that we could have stronger language that might place that responsibility more definitely on the districts.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, just at the-
Okay, well, that's certainly an area we can talk about, but you're right, Jane, we did talk about getting, having evaluations done of the buildings. I think Bill Toom pointed out at our full board meeting that Gilmontague is already in the process of having it done for its buildings, but that does leave, I'm not sure if that includes the elementary schools though. And it does leave Pioneer.
Well, we don't know what Pioneer has done. We don't know what the individual towns have done
Right.
as far as evaluating their own buildings. I'm sure Leiden has done everything, as
We don't have-
has Warwick.
I personally think that it should stay with the towns. I think it just makes it more difficult for saying, okay, and we're going to look at the district and own all those. I think that would be, you know, they lose autonomy for so many things. I think they would like to have at least autonomy of their own facility. And it's also easier to pass at your individual town meeting when you put on the warrant that you need to do a roof or you need to do an upgrade on the furnace or whatever. People are usually much more supportive than, at least that's my opinion, than, oh, wait a minute now,
Okay.
this town needs this, that town needs that, this town, you know. So I don't know. I think it ought to stay with the towns and leave
Okay.
well enough alone.
Well,
I think I don't disagree. I'm sorry, Alan. or Mike. I don't disagree with that, Alan. What I'm saying is we need to have more definition as to who takes care of what, so we don't fall into this trap that we're in where, well, if you'd done a better job of maintenance, we wouldn't have this capital. And that's kind of the way it winds up sounding when we get to the end.
But Jane,
You're
that's-
right.
So
Jane, that also has to do with the job description for the facilities manager, which the towns don't get involved in. And so unless you're gonna put something in the district agreement for that, it really has to do with the superintendent and telling the facilities director, manager what to do. And that's a job description.
Yeah, I think
Well,
Jane's got a good
maybe.
point, though, in that we just need better clarification on what's a capital expense. Because the debate
Oh,
always
we
comes
tried
down to, you know, well, I know, we
We
tried that at the
tried.
heart committee.
Can I say that I think this is a good discussion, but it's not actually on our agenda, or at least we have other things to talk about on our agenda. We should, to be continued, okay?
Okay.
I mean, because I think what we've done is identify this as the buildings generally, and then ownership of the buildings, or maybe I should say ownership / responsibility for building maintenance, as being topics that we want to discuss further. Does that sound good?
right, and I think we got onto this subject because we were talking about the grant, and we said this was one
Right.
thing that we thought
Right.
would be covered by the grant.
And so I
then
think the
as we
suggestion's
always
been
do,
that
start
a
tracking
grant
that.
might cover more evaluation of the buildings to the extent that that's necessary. Which I guess we don't quite know what Gil Montague is doing or what Pioneer has done, but with the
No, and we
assumption
may
that,
want ours to. We might
Right.
want it independent of what they do.
very
Well,
true. very true.
Remember that at the last, and maybe it was an education subcommittee meeting, I don't remember, but at one of our last subcommittee meetings, the Gil Montague School Committee member, I think it was
Bill Toom said that.
he said that Gil Montague just went through that whole thing for all their buildings, and they were just waiting for one other report. Did he not? So they were
Yes, he
pretty
said
much
that, but I
done.
think what I hear Jane saying is that we would need to see what they come up with and then decide if it's enough for us.
I think that's a wise assessment.
Right, so then when I talk to the superintendents, I gotta make a note here, I should probably be asking if we could get a copy, if Gil Montague could give us a copy of their facilities assessments. And then talk to John about where are they in that process on their elementary schools, correct? Am I
Sounds
on the
good.
right track here?
Well, we want the building assessment. I would just
Not
ask
just the
them what
elementary
kind of
schools.
building assessments they have for all of their buildings, and can we have copies?
Okay,
Yeah, that sounds good.
You know, who did it and when?
Okay.
I'm not interested in an assessment that was prepared by the facilities manager.
right, no, I understood. You want to have one that is not biased and it's done by someone with expertise. And I like your suggestion. I think it was you that suggested you're really looking for the kind of thing you get when you're going to sell a home. You're looking for an inspection when they look at everything and they tell you, this is going to go in 10 years. This warranty has gone out. You're going to need a new roof or
Right. I
whatever.
think
So
that
you're
was
looking
Lynn
for.
that suggested that.
That was Lynn's suggestion.
Lynn, that's a good way to approach it, Lynn. So I agree. So maybe I can make it clear that we're looking for, what did you call it? Like a home inspection?
Building inspection,
Say it again?
professional
Oh,
building assessment,
okay, thank you.
inspection, assessment report. And you want it to cover all the structural stuff, but you also want to have it cover all the mechanicals too.
And we're not looking for an architect to do that.
No.
Okay.
No, there are professionals in the field that do this. They're specifically trained and they belong to specific societies.
Oh.
You know,
Well, if-
for their professional certifications.
If you have that information, Lynn, if you have a couple of them, then it might make it clearer if I'm writing the grant to be able to reference and say inspections at, that are provided like, and then, list a couple so that it's clear that, this is what we're looking at. It's not giving them, an unfair advantage. It just makes it clear this is the work that they do. And I can also,
Okay.
I could also maybe make contact and say, when you do one, what is it you do? And then I could put that level of detail in the grant.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll talk to people that I know, on the, how do you say, more minor scale level and ask if they have the capacity to do that. And if they don't, who would they recommend?
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to try to share my screen here. Hopefully it can work.
Are you guys aware that there's an education subcommittee meeting? I think it's starting at 5. So at some point I'll have to bow out.
We didn't know that, no. I'm showing now, I'd like to sort of start going through how we reacted to the report, given the fact that we don't have the final copy, but we did get the interim copy, which is pretty similar. And I've put together this document as just a way of structuring how I think about what it's offering us. So, this is, other people should feel free to chime in. I mean, this is, I'm not saying this is the only way to think about it, but I just thought it's better to have, it's always better to present something to just have a blank piece of paper and say, what do you think? So,
Yeah.
so I'm presenting this.
So are you suggesting, Mike, as to review this, that these are areas that you or the finance committee is going to look into because it wasn't clear or that information?
No,
was
I'm
missing?
suggesting these are areas that the finance, that according to our charge, the finance committee should be interested in. And does, are we satisfied that we have enough information, or do we want to get more? And then if we want to get more, how are we going to do that?
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay.
Is this one of the files that you sent to us, Mike?
I believe I sent this before our December 9th meeting. So I'm not
Yeah.
sure
Okay.
Michelle has a copy. Michelle, I can send you a
Yeah.
copy of this.
Yeah, I don't have this.
I think this is the one that you had trouble printing last time, Jane.
Ah, okay.
But that's, I mean, that's okay. I'll send around a printable copy to everyone after this meeting. And I think if we just look at it on the screen, it might be as easy as anything.
Sure.
Starting at the top, we've got Chapter 70 funding. The consultant's appendix 11 goes into Chapter 70 funding, projected Chapter 70 funding in some detail. And I guess I'm wondering if we feel that we need more than that.
We don't have a way to assess that.
They dropped Gil Montague back to the same type of funding that Pioneer is getting, right?
Well, they offered us, actually, they offered us several scenarios. Two, but it's a little hard to describe in words, but they presented 4 different scenarios, sort of a 2 and 2 situation. where they had suggested two different educational programs, Program 1 and Program 2. And they had also, they also looked at Chapter 70 funding with hold harmless preserved for the combined district as it exists for the two districts separately. And another scenario for hold harmless for just the two districts when they combine, not being considered for their previous hold harmless. And from the from the Chapter 70 funding point of view, there were two scenarios. One assumes that basically right now Pioneer gets a lot of hold harmless aid, and Gil Montague used to get hold harmless aid, but no longer does. And a combined district would go back to being hold harmless, but would be a lot, it would lose a lot of it would lose most of the hold harmless money that Pioneer is getting now. Basically because Gil Montague would make it closer to what it should get, so it wouldn't need so much hold harmless money to get there. So and Alan had shared at our last meeting that he talked with, I think it was Jay Barry, who had given the opinion that that the state would not take away hold harmless money, that would be too much of a disincentive for districts to go ahead and do this.
Right.
So,
But really, our question was,
Lost the screen share.
what would happen with, Gil Montague is no longer hold harmless, so they actually get more aid. And that's what we wanted to preserve going forward. And was that a possibility? At least that was my question.
Right. And
Were
so
they
that,
Were they going to
Well, I think-
hold Gil Montague harmless
it
from
could.
having to revert back?
well, you mean sort of treat them as two separate districts going forwards?
no,
I'm not sure how that
no,
would
I
work.
think,
No, they're going to give the new district the best advantage of a merger.
Okay. Well, the way I see that working is, and tell me if this makes sense, that the way that would work is, let's say the districts were to merge for FY21. What DESI would do is look at before the merge, Pioneer, what's it going to get for Chapter 70 aid? Gil Montague, before the merge, what's it going to get for Chapter 70 aid? Add those two numbers together, and then give that amount of Chapter 70 aid to the combined district.
and that would be the only way that I think this could possibly go forward. So right
Right.
now, Pioneer over the next 5 years would only get about 20,000. Gil Montague would get about 450,000. So, so there's such a incentive for them to do it. So, in our preliminary conversations, it was about, there's no way that this would make any sense at all. And so, Mike, the way you're presenting this, I think just has to be the way it plays out. You can't take away the advantage that Gil Montague has finally, gotten themselves at, because then we're back to making, keeping the cuts that we had before. So they're going to
Okay.
restore some things with that aid, educationally, bring positions back and so forth. And so it would make no sense to merge the districts together, and then they have to eliminate those positions, because they just lost the accumulative 450,000 that they'll be getting each year. So we would have to be very clear to the state, look, you're asking us to do this. We're the first ones willing to put our toe in the water and check this out. You can't punish us for trying to implement something that you've asked us to look at. And I think everyone will be watching that. So I think your assessment of, I don't know if they'll add the 20, but they should. And that's the way we'd want to present it.
Well, I agree with what you say, Alan, but I do think there's a glitch. And if we want, we can switch because we're talking about it. Let's see. Over here to this, I sent this around just
Somehow
last week, I think.
lost that half of this by doing something.
By the
You're-
way,
okay.
that will have an impact on minimum contributions. So we have to, when you have the combined and everything, and then you take a look at, well, how does that share play out with all the districts? That is probably, I don't want to say more important, but I guess it's right. It probably is more important, is how does that impact how much each town is going to have to come up with,
Well,
even with
that's
that additional aid.
well, that's an important point. And one of the questions I have is the scenario I just described would be for FY21, okay, where whatever year starts out being the first one, let's say it's FY21. We know what Pioneer looks like beforehand. We know what Gilmontague looks like beforehand. We can add those numbers together and that becomes the aid for FY21. What happens at FY22? Okay, you've got a
Well,
combined district. There is no
if they-
before for Pioneer. There is
They
no
could never-
before for Gilmontague. And so the way hold harmless works is the state goes through its calculation for what Chapter 70 should be. Then it looks at what you got last year. Whichever is bigger, that's what you get. The way I see it, that's what the state would do at FY22. So at that point, no matter how much we got at FY21, we would, a combined district would likely only get the so many dollars per student that hold harmless districts get. And that would be true going forward until such time as the combined district got out of the hold harmless situation, which is a little hard to predict, but given the assumption that enrollment is going to continue to decline, which is what the report shows, I think it's reasonable to think that that's not going to happen anytime soon. Okay. So unless there's other factors in play, I mean, there might be other changes to the Chapter 70 law, but that's the issue I see with the kind of rosy scenario of saying, well, if we just get all the aid of, that both districts get separately for a combined district, then we're great going forward, because I don't see us being great going forward. And just to go over this quickly, there's a number of things here. But one of them is the Chapter 70 aid. And what I've done is to take the numbers off of, I think it's chart 50. Yeah, I've got chart 50 over here just as a reference. Which is the consultant's projection for FY21 for combined district, which is all we got from them. And then I made some assumptions going forward and I put them down at the bottom here. And if we change the numbers, it will change things up on the top here. And some of these down here on the towns tab, basically to go through this real quick, I've got the foundation enrollment. This is from the consultants. The regional budget, I think I assume a 2.5% increase for a regional budget. If we don't think that's reasonable, we can change the numbers down here and it will affect the numbers up along the regional budget. We then look at the common revenues, which include the simulated Chapter 70. I assumed $40 a pupil there. It's been as high as 50. It's been as low, I think, as 25. I think the consultants assumed 30. Again, we can pick, we can pick other numbers and see how all this works out. But this is based on right now $40, which means that you get your FY21 and then FY22 doesn't go up very much. We have our transportation coming from the state. I think Pioneer estimated transportation reimbursement would go up about 2.4%. So I just used that. And again, these assumptions are all just things I picked to be able to use something. The way I see it, one of the things our committee can and should do if we want to is to go over them, have everyone say either, yeah, that all sounds good, or wait a minute, no, we should use a different assumptions for this or that or the other thing. And what does that do to the numbers? Again, Medicaid, bond proceeds, tuitions and fees, interest income, all those things, basically they're just added together off of the Gil Montague and the Pioneer 5-year projection, the do nothing projections. And both those districts essentially flatlined most of that stuff going forward. So that's what this does. Then we get to our assessments, and the assessments come from the towns tab, because what I did was to basically take the, actually going back here, this amount to be assessed line right here is basically just the top line budget minus all those revenues that come from some other place. And then over on the towns tab, it starts with those amounts to be assessed. I got from Mark Abraham's, he actually got it from Desi. I got him to break out by town what the required local contributions are estimated to be going forward for a combined district. And I plugged those into this table, and I got enrollment figures. I basically just took the proportions of enrollment in FY21 and used those proportions to break out the total enrollment, foundation enrollment figures. Because I had asked Mark to ask Desi what foundation enrollment figures they used by town going forward, and I did not get an answer on that. So either, I don't know quite, it seems to be Desi must have had an assumption by town, perhaps not, I don't know. But because they didn't really go into town assessments, they went into town local contributions, which don't have anything to do with foundation enrollment. But to get to assessments, obviously you need to do something. So I just, as I say, I use those proportions going forward and came out with enrollments by town, used the minimum contributions, subtracted minimum contributions from the amount to be assessed, took the rest, and divided up by the foundation enrollment, came out with numbers per town, and those get plugged in back on, actually they're plugged in for individual towns down on this sheet. And we don't need to go over this in detail. I'm just kind of showing you what's here. And then back on here, they get all added up, and the transportation gets added in, excess of net school spending, if people care, it's a big number. Districts spend a lot more than the state says that they should need to spend to provide a good education, which to me just proves that the state is wrong about what is actually needed to provide a good education. And these are the total of the assessments. So my main point in jumping in here just at this point is, that Alan's point that the best scenario going forward, I think the best scenario going forward is to get as much money, Chapter 70 money as we could, right up front, because whatever we do, a combined district is going to be in a hold harmless situation. So we're not going to get a whole lot more. The only question is not a whole lot more than what. That's our initial amount. So that should be as big as possible. But one of the downsides I see, because I am not yet a big fan of this merger. I'll say that right now. I'm keeping an open mind, but I'm seeing, some things that make me wonder, that make me say, well, that's not so great. And this is one of them. Okay. I'm not sure how realistic it is to keep this budget increased at 2.5%. Gil Montague says they're going to increase their budget much less than that. Can they really do that? I wonder. I mean, with uh, contracts, personnel is usually at least 70% of the budget. If you give everyone a 3% raise, you're at 2.1% right there. And you haven't increased money for, materials or anything. So as I say, I think that, if we want, we could look at these assumptions in more detail. But this is what this is. So anybody
Mike,
have
Gil
any?
Montague can say that because they know that they're gonna get, around $450,000. So they can say to the towns, the towns are gonna say to them, look, you're getting all this additional money. You're bringing back these positions. We want to see some kind of savings on the town side from this.
Well, Ellen,
we've
but
been
this I believe what I saw for Gil Montague is the top line budget. So
For 22 or for 21?
no, that was I don't remember, Jane. I don't remember. But like I say, that's, we can look at those assumptions. It may have been historical what they've been doing. But it may also have been it may have been the going forward part.
Yeah.
It just surprised me that it was so low.
Mike, if I go out right now, will you let me back in if I can get it? I gotta see if I can get in education subcommittee to talk a couple quick things with them. If I can get back in, is it you that lets me in? You see me trying to
I
get
don't
in?
need to let you in. If you just put that link back in your browser, you should come right back.
Okay, I would come. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna check
Okay.
on them. Be back. I
Okay.
hope. And by the way, I'm so pleased that we have you and we have the four of you, because this is such a huge piece, and it's not very often you get some really good financial minds that can start playing around
Well,
with this. So
frankly,
kudos.
I think the consultants should have given us that, and I was a little miffed.
Yeah.
that I had to do it myself, but luckily.
Yeah, we should have been clearer. I think we should. I didn't write the grant, but we definitely need to have a lesson learned from that we need to be very clear on what it is our expectations are in their report. So
frankly, Ellen, to me, it seems kind of obvious to me that if you're gonna
Mhm.
tell people what the effect of having a merger is, and you're showing them the effect of no merger with 5-year projections of keeping the district separate, that you would also
know.
have a 5-year projection of what happens if you put them together. It just seems like,
absolutely.
something is missing if that's not in the picture.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's just
that
me.
seems like a no-brainer. Yeah, that
Yes, it
seems like a
does.
no-brainer.
Yes, it does.
I would agree. All right, I'm gonna check out, and if I can get out of that meeting, I'm gonna come back to this one because this is good stuff. All right,
Okay.
thank you.
So,
Let's see how-
but anyway, so back to this, unless people want to talk about that some more, but we can certainly have plenty of opportunity to talk about that in the future. And I'd encourage people, I think you all have copies of that spreadsheet. Feel free to play around. Like I said, I created that as a tool for us all to use to kind of say, well, what happens if this, if you want to, arrange things differently. I'm not saying that I've got the best idea for how to do it. I just had a little practice. We went through an exercise like this for Gil Montague about 10 years ago and carried it forward for several years. And so I got fairly good at doing things this way. But that's not to say it's the only way to do it.
Well, I appreciate your doing it and I appreciate you sharing it. And I think it is a starting.
It wouldn't do much good if it was only me that knew about it.
Pardon? I didn't hear you, Lynn.
Yeah, I didn't hear her either.
It just gives us a good place to start.
Right.
Yes, I think the
Yeah, I
main
think
thing is
these
the
are
structure.
not-
And like I say, I tried to find
Wanting-
assumptions for everything that I had some sort of basis for.
Yep.
But some of them are a lot iffier than others. And all of them are iffy to some extent, obviously, because we're talking about the future. And to me, that the main insight is that being a hold harmless district going forward doesn't necessarily get us in a great place financially.
Right.
So, well,
No,
I think,
I
that's what we
think we're
should
gonna
do.
have to dig into the finances a lot more and with thinking a lot more broadly than we are now. We're thinking about handling the finances the way we've handled them in the past. And I think we're gonna have to come up with some new ideas or some new recommendations for how this can work.
Sure.
And that goes for education, period.
Well,
It can't go on like this.
there is something that I would like to say about very small towns is when you look at what towns like Leiden are paying to be in this district, the current district. I mean, I've done the finances. At some point, when you only have 15 children, say, in town, at some point, it's not worth being in the district. And to pay the OPEB costs and all to get out of the district, when you start doing the finances, is almost a no-brainer. You know, if we're gonna pay $854,000, I mean, you could almost pay that, you know, a $2 million OPEB cost back in a couple of years, you know, with the low interest rates the way they are. And so I agree with Jane. We got to start looking at the way we pay for education, because as the decreasing enrollment in the small towns, with the decreasing enrollment in the small towns, maybe a district should have comprise of towns that have X amount of students or more, you know? When you start getting into, what I'm saying is when you start getting into the very low numbers of children, being part of
Yeah.
a district doesn't make sense.
Well, and it certainly contributes to huge fluctuations in assessments.
Right.
But where do these kids go otherwise? I mean, if they're not part of it.
You
Oh,
have to tuition them in,
you could tuition them in for a lot cheaper.
Oh,
But-
okay.
but
all right.
that's not a given. Michelle.
No, I'm not saying, but I mean, if you start looking at the finances, you could almost come up with alternative things,
Right.
but you know, we're not there yet, but we've talked about it.
Well, we've
Well,
talked
and-
about in Bernard
You know?
Center that, you know, it might be cheaper to tuition our high school students to wherever we can.
Yeah, I don't
I
know
th-
how many children you have, but you know, when you start looking at Leiden and Warwick, you don't have very many kids going.
And I think it's, certainly, I think, I agree, this would be good to talk about. I suspect we're gonna run into the fact that, you know, at some point, somebody's gotta pay what the cost is. And so maybe what part of what we talk about is how can we change that so that, for one thing, so it isn't the localities paying so much of the cost.
Well, and a 6-town district is probably not big enough.
Well,
I
that-
agree, Jane. I think
may
you're
be true.
right.
That
I
may be
think-
true.
You know, I've been saying for 2 or 3 years now that 1 or 2 districts in Franklin County is all we need and all we can reasonably support. And we need to figure out what the problems are with that and how to solve them. And of course, one of the problems is busing.
Right.
But there are ways to figure that out if we want to use the brains that God gave us.
Yep, I agree.
Jane, do you think that might be a topic for a grant application?
A
Or do
larger
you think that
district.
would? Yeah, to basically recommend,
Well, you
however
know,
many.
you've heard, yes, absolutely. And you've heard me say this before, that the 4 towns of the Pioneer District voted not for a 6-town region. We voted to explore
Right.
a larger regionalization. I've forgotten the exact wording, but we did not vote for a 6-town region.
Okay.
That
So
is,
if we were to ask for
Young said the same thing. believe.
recommended, sort of recommended district configurations, if we could
Yes.
find someone who could do a decent job of that.
Well, and I'm going to say this, and you can all shoot me out of the meeting or whatever. I would like to see a
Don't get your
different,
hopes up, Jane.
I would, okay. Well, I'll say it and then I'll resign. How about that? I would like to see different consultants. I was very disappointed in how much this consultant's report looks like the last consultant's report. And I'm afraid if we have them again, we're going to get so much of the same. I realize a lot of the statistics are not going to change, but it just seemed like that they just put a little more frosting on the cake. It's
Well,
just,
and
so being part of the Heart Committee, Jane, we did not get a lot of people to bid on these grants. And that's what you're gonna find yourself getting involved in.
I'm
There's
sure
not many people out there.
I can still vote.
Yes,
I mean, ideally, we would do it ourselves. But even if we thought we had the wherewithal intellectually and physically and monetarily to do it ourselves, given the pandemic that we're in, we couldn't.
wow.
You know, I mean, if you outlined everything you needed and you had enough manpower, you could go around the county and put this together. And maybe it wouldn't be that hard, because if Gil Montague towns and district are having this discussion and Pioneer towns are having this discussion, we know that Mohawk is having these discussions.
Right.
We know that some people in the frontier region are thinking along these lines. So it may just mean that we need to start talking more to each other. So yes, Mike, I think it'd be a wonderful thing to put in.
okay. Well, and you get no argument from me about finding someone else to do it than the consultants we had for the last report.
Yeah, I don't know. They're nice guys and they do good work, but it just seemed like it was a rehash of
They're nice guys and they do okay work. I would say. I don't mean to be negative, but I like I say, I was kind of floored that we did not get. I mean, how many times did we tell them in our meetings, Jane, back, you know, what we want is tools so that going forward, we can figure out what's going on. And how many of those do we actually get?
Well, I can kind of understand why they didn't want to give us the tools, because as I just said, we could go out and do this ourselves. So if they gave us the tools, then we could really go out and do it ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Yet another reason not to hire them
Anyway,
again.
we're beating that.
They got 50 grand, they got more than 50 grand. So,
Yeah.
because they got the 2 grants. Anyway, okay. So, but as far as chapter 70, I mean, I feel that we got as much as we're going to get and probably enough to do whatever we want to look ahead. Does anybody want to say
No,
any more?
as far as looking ahead goes, maybe we should come up with some criteria and suggestions for how the state ought to change that and use that scenario.
Okay.
Going forward, I don't see we're going to see more money from the state for the next couple of years. We're all going to see less because they've got less to give out. I mean, I think every town's looking at shrinking income.
Well, that may be true, although you never know. I think there's a general realization on Capitol Hill that or on Beacon Hill anyway, that education funding is broken and needs to be fixed, and that if it isn't fixed, there's going to be some big problems, that there already are problems. And so we'll see. I don't want to be too pessimistic, although I think you're right. I think the pandemic has
Well, they've
definitely
used so much
shown
of
a
the
monkey
rainy day fund for this year. What,
yeah. Well, they're
and if they're wise, they're not going to use that rainy day fund up.
yeah. Well, I've
I mean, it's
got
raining now, but it could pour.
I've got a whole thing about on the cap of on the 82.5% cap on the required local contribution, which they could free up almost $1 billion, spread it around. They wouldn't even have to come up with any more money on the state level. They would just redistribute how the money is allocated on the local level, and make the rich towns pay more and the poor towns pay less.
How do you do that?
And,
Yeah.
but anyway, I think that's another thing for us to talk. I mean, this meeting, and it's already 5:30, so I don't want to take, we could go all night, I think.
Right, right.
Right.
But I was hoping at least this time to kind of get a list of things that we want to sort of do more on in the future. So we've already got at least a couple. So
Well,
why don't we?
Next week, we're going to meet with Joanne.
Well, actually, late breaking news. I just saw when I was sending an email around to remind people of this meeting. I saw an email from her saying that she has now a conflict, and is there another time?
Oh, geez.
So we should talk about what's good for us. That's a good reason for us to talk about when good meeting times are for us. But it sounds like we won't be meeting with Joanne next week.
Nuisance.
Which is kind of too bad,
Yeah.
because that's been set up for a while. But
Well, she offered the 13th and the 27th.
she did originally.
What happens if we say,
I can't do the 13th. We have a
well,
Pioneer
that's the,
Budget Subcommittee.
that's the one she just canceled, Michelle.
Oh,
Right, and we had offered the 27th because I had offered her Wednesdays around 3 or 3:30, and those may not work for Michelle. So, I think that's why we should talk generally about what good times are, and then get back to Joanne and say, based on these times, what might be good for you. So
Well,
let's plan to do that. When we get a little further down the list.
okay.
Next item after Chapter 70 funding is the district's operational and capital budgets. We have their 5-year do nothing scenarios. I know Jane certainly had some questions about Pioneer scenario. I know Tanya at the time was saying, well, I don't like that scenario either because we're not going to do nothing. So I just kind of put, yeah, we have them, but do we trust them? And then we have some projections going forward. We have actually not projections, but we have estimated FY21 budgets under those 4 scenarios. And my impression is that moving ahead with the program 1 education scenario is not something that people find particularly appealing, and that moving ahead, assuming that the hold harmless aid will not be preserved, is not something that people find particularly appealing. And so that really leaves only one scenario, which is program 2, assuming that hold harmless is preserved. And that was the basis. That's chart 50, which is what I used for the basis for my projection tool there.
Didn't we say that we needed some input from the education committee to really go for?
Well, we did say that. We did say that. And one thing that I'd like to talk about sometime is our planning board seems to have come to the conclusion, without really talking about it formally, that our goal is not really to save any money for the towns. That maybe that these solutions might even end up costing towns money. And in fact, sometimes it does, although it depends on the town.
Well, I do agree with you, Mike, that we said that saving money should not be the primary goal.
Right. But my understanding of the Hart Committee, and now that Michelle's here, my understanding of the Hart Committee's concerns, a lot of them were financial, that the towns felt that the assessments were basically too high and we're going to be unsustainable.
Yes.
So am I wrong in thinking that, or?
No, you're not wrong.
So if no money gets saved, I mean, and I'm just raising a question. I'm not trying to come to a conclusion, but if that's true, then I'm not sure how moving ahead with a scenario where money does not get saved ends up being sustainable. And I'm thinking back to our last board meeting when I think it was Deb Potee said that she was thinking they should prepare a handout that basically says this is a path to sustainability. And I just wonder, is that true? Do we agree with that? Is it a path to sustainability? That was one of the reasons I put together that forecasting tool, was to say, well, what is it going to look like? And then one of the questions to be asked looking at it is, well, is this sustainable? So I'd say that's something I'd like to talk about more. with
Of
our
course,
committee.
my opinion, and it is that unless this is much more than a 6-town district, it is not
Not
sustainable.
sustainable. I agree
Okay.
with that. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think,
You have to, I mean, my mother went to a one-room school and her town supported that one-room school. And she told me at one time that when she was in the 7th grade, there were 12 students in the school. Now, when she got
Wow.
to high school, they got tuitioned into a town, nearby town. But up through the 8th grade, they were in a one-room schoolhouse. Are we going back to that? I mean, when Leiden talks about having, what did you say, 15 students in the show? That's a one-room school.
You're right. It is.
And,
That's
right.
and how the teacher taught those
All
15
grades.
students,
Yeah.
and older students helped the younger students, and everybody wound up with a good education or a
Yeah.
sufficient education, because some of them were going to drop out and become farmers or whatever. You know,
And we're still going to have that. They're going to drop out and go to the tech school.
well, I think that if they choose to go to the tech school, that is their wise decision, because
Yes.
they know what they want to
They're
do
going to get.
in their
yeah.
adult life, and they know that's where they can get the education to do it. And I think we should stop looking at the tech school as a thief in the night.
No, I didn't mean it that way.
I know you
What I
didn't, but-
meant was all 15 were going to continue.
Some of your fellow school committee members look at it that way.
I don't. And can I ask, I thought the tech school was involved in this originally. What happened?
They were involved in the prior grant or another grant that Gil Montague got, where the 3 districts were looking at sharing some services.
Right.
But when this grant came along, it did not include the tech school.
Oh,
And Gil Montague wrote the grant, so that was a little before my
My
time.
understanding is that the
Oh.
tech school was not included because it's so different in what it does, that the idea of having one big district that did, the perception was that Gil Montague and Pioneer essentially do the same sort of thing, which, for lack of a better phrase, might be called college prep. And that the tech school does something different. It does tech prep or whatever. And that although there's sort of a, there's not a hard line between those things, they are pretty different. I mean, the tech school has their automotive shop and their this shop and their that shop, and the Gil Montague and Pioneer are much more similar than either one of them is to the tech school. And so the idea was that that would be an unworkable model. That was sort of a decision made up front, I believe.
okay.
Okay, getting back to this chart, I mean, just under the operational capital budgets, I talk a little bit, we have, I talk about what we have and what we don't have. Some of that has changed because I put together that tool. We have the E&D and other reserves and investments. This is all kind of drawn from our charge as a subcommittee. And looking at that sort of with more educated eyes, as I was going through this, I was thinking, well, I'm not sure all of this stuff is exactly what we really want to focus on. But I listed it here, and I think, let's see, I'm not sure what alternative transportation opportunities is supposed to mean. And then there was facilities, locations, and so on. So I'm, to me at this point, I guess I figured that the big hole in the consultant's report was some sort of tool to do projections on what a 6-town district would look like in the years going forward. And I had talked with Alan. Alan called me and said, if we were to go for this grant, what do you think would be useful? And that was one of the ideas that came up. And then actually after I hung up the phone, I thought, I bet I could do a better job than consultants would do. And it would also take, we wouldn't have to wait 6 months to get it either. And so I said, let's see if I'm right. And I sat down and started trying to put stuff together, and that's what I came up with. So at this point, while I think there are holes in the report as presented, I'm not sure I see anything more that I want anyway, the consultants to do more work on. I think we've got what we've got, and it's enough to work with for our purposes. But other people should chime in and feel free to disagree with that.
Well, since this is my first meeting, I am not sure what I would say is needed. So I'll look to the other 2 people, Lynn and Jane.
I think what I want from the consultants is a well-formatted document that we could have printed so that we can take a good hard copy and I don't remember how much money we have left in the budget, but there's some money left in that grant money. And maybe that could give each of us a hard copy of that report. I'm finding it difficult to work with their report on the computer for some reason. Maybe the size of it, and I can't easily flip back and forth from one page to another when I want to. I can't put sticky notes on it like I do with paper.
We should be able to get hard copies of it, and they should be formatted
Right.
correctly. I mean, I think if
We need-
they're,
I'd like the appendices also to be closely aligned too. They got separated and they're off somewhere.
I know, I was looking.
now, how do you mean, Lynn?
Well, the appendices are not a part of the report. They're attached
Right.
to another email. And I tried to get everything, all in one file on my desktop and have every single one of them all open on the bottom so I could just go, and every time I want something, it seems the thing I want's not there.
I agree with that.
And it takes
You
too
waste so much time hunting for it.
Yeah. And right now we're trying to do this screen share. Somehow I lost part of it, but the previous part is so small, I really couldn't read it anyway. So I did find, this document. So now I've got the document next to the Zoom part, but it's, it's completely separated, and I couldn't figure out a way to get attached again.
Okay, well, let's make note then that the appendices, I mean, I do have them all in a file on my computer, or a folder, I should say. I don't think it's, just to be clear, I don't think we're going to get printouts of the appendices, at least not all of them,
Okay, well,
because some of them are pretty large.
and I tried to do the same thing.
Okay. What I can try to do is I've got that Dropbox. I could try to put my folder on Dropbox and send everybody a link. And then you can see if you can just copy that folder to your computer and see if that works. I'll do that after the meeting.
Yeah, because I'm having a hard time finding the appendix, any appendix in our 6-town region pages out there.
And just to let you know, one thing I discovered looking through this stuff is that a couple of the appendix, they talk about, I think I have it on, well, somewhere. Anyway, we have Gil Monahue's 5-year do nothing scenario and Pioneer's 5-year do nothing scenario
Yeah,
as part of the appendix. But if you open them up, all we get is the first sheet
right.
for some reason. And back at our June meeting with the consultant, remember how he was going through, there were all these other sheets in the workbook that basically had all the raw data, and that the main sheet, was just, everything kind of was pulled into the main sheet from someplace else. So why they didn't give us those? I mean, it looks to me as if the main sheets haven't changed, but why all we got was one sheet and everything else? I will check and see if things are hidden, but it just seemed odd to me.
I
having
just
gone
want
through.
to tell you, I have to leave this room within 10 minutes because it's going to be a
Okay.
meeting in here. I'm not at home. I'm at the
Okay.
office. So
Okay.
that's why I keep putting my mask on. Someone walks in and
Okay. Okay. Well, I tell you what, real quick, just to show you the other thing that I passed around. These are enrollment projections.
Yes.
Oh,
And
yeah.
not to go over them in any detail, but these are basically pulled from, this is a lot of historical information that I've just been kind of collecting. The thing that I found interesting was here on the first tab, the Nasdaq projections that are used for going forward, for the enrollment projections going forward in the consultant's report. I finally found, nobody ever answered my question about where they came from, but I figured out that they actually come from the DART report. And let's see if I can find. Here we go, the summary page. Yeah, here we have the Nasdaq projections here on line 9. And what I did was I show in blue the ones that were actuals at the
Yeah.
time of the Nasdaq report.
Yes.
And then I turned to red showing their projections. Well, it's now a couple of years later and the DART numbers have come out for 2 more years. And so you can compare the Nasdaq number with the DART number. And looking at the previous years, they're exactly the same.
Are they?
For those 2 years, the DART numbers are a lot smaller. And another thing to show you is I just put some charts together and, again, you can look at these, feel free to play with these, make your own charts, do whatever. But I was trying to get a sense of, what's happening with enrollment. And, when we talk about declining enrollment, Nasdaq is the DART and Nasdaq, from what I can tell, is actually enrollment, people in the building. So it's netting out choice in, choice out, charter out. So trends in those can have a big effect on that number. What affects Chapter 70 is in foundation enrollment. And so those could be going in different directions. And my question was, are they? Now, Michelle's got to go. So
We need to
If-
pick meetings.
we need to figure out what a good meeting. Now, Michelle, Thursday afternoons are better for you than Wednesdays. Is that true?
Well, I have a lot of FERCog meetings on Thursday, starting at 5:30.
Okay. What about, what about say 3 to 5?
Only because this is the budget season.
Okay.
I'm on FERCog, I'm on Pioneer budget, so if it wasn't
Well-
budget season, it wouldn't be a problem, but
Well, how generally speaking, how does 3 to 5 work for you? I know you
No.
said that you're sort of on the clock, but then you said that might be okay.
yeah, if it's not every week,
Okay.
once in a while, it won't be a problem. Because I can, work my schedule around it.
But it'd be better for you if it were after 5 or after 4.
Yeah, after 4.
Okay. But not on Thursdays.
Well, some Thursdays, and of course, my phone is not bringing up my FERCog meetings, and I don't know why.
Their budget will be finalized pretty soon.
Yeah, it will be. It's just like January, February.
Right.
And then like I said, then I'm okay. The school too, January, February, March,
Well-
maybe.
Well, I know the rest of us had expressed, a preference for doing earlier meetings, and that's because, that worked for all of us.
Tuesdays, how are Tuesdays for people?
Okay.
Tuesday works for me.
How about
Mhm.
Tuesday, like 4:15? I don't know about Alan, but
Well, Alan's ex officio. I mean, it's nice to have him come. I think he
Oh,
seems
okay.
pretty open. He
okay,
and Greg are both ex officio, and Greg can't come because he's teaching now, but.
okay,
um,
all right. Yeah, let's try Tuesdays.
Okay.
Well,
Um,
actually, Wednesday's not a problem, but just for this Joanne Blair meeting, if she can do a Tuesday,
um,
then you could do Wednesdays.
right,
Well-
okay. So if we were to say Tuesday at say 4, try to do like 4 to 5:30, something like that.
Sure.
Okay. I mean, and I personally would prefer not to have them every week. On the other hand, if we got to get it done, we got to get it done. I think we made a lot of progress today about things we want to pursue. We've got a board meeting next week on Thursday. Why don't I get back to Joanne, see what's good with her? And say Tuesdays might be better, say 4 to 5:30.
Mhm.
And see how that goes, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
Yeah, as long
Sound
as it's
good?
4 to 5:30, I have, some Tuesdays I have a 6 o'clock. Not every
Okay.
Tuesday, but
Well, it's good to have a hard cutoff, I think, and if we'll
Mhm.
just we'll try to be disciplined and get our work done, and if if it takes time, it takes time, right?
right.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
All
Well,
right.
thank you very
Very
much.
good.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Did you set a meeting when I was missing?
No, because I'm going to talk to Joanne.
All right,
I think we've got a full board meeting next Thursday. Let's wait and see what Joanne says. And if we, if she can, if it takes a while to meet with her, maybe we'll want to meet again beforehand. On the other hand, maybe we'll just wait, meet with her next and then go from there.
Okay. Very good.
I'm not sure we're in a rush here. So,
no,
but that's what you guys can,
no, we have a lot to do, and it takes a lot of time to let things digest and think about them. That's not something that comes off the top of your head.
right.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
have a good week, and I'll move
Yeah.
to adjourn.
Well, we need to take a vote on adjourning.
Yay.
Just to be, okay.
Yes.
All in favor? Aye.
Bye.
Opposed? Well, thank you everybody for coming, and probably see you a week from Thursday,
Okay.
a week from
Very good.
today, next Thursday.
right. Thanks, Mike.
Thank
All
you,
Okay.
Mike.
Let's see. Okay.